Action on Badziakouski.
32.
He raises from under the gun. King-queen suited.
Oh, that is a very delicious bet for that sexy queen.
Round to the blinds. Pocket sixes for David Yan in the small. He calls. Max Silver in the big has 8-6.
He is all the silver you can handle. He is maximum silver.
And he's getting a rather appealing price here.
Mm-hmm.
He calls as well. We've got some three-way action. The flop is king high, so Mikita flops best, top pair. He's a 3-1 favorite. And the action has been checked to him.
Badziakouski should be betting this.
106,000 in the middle. And no c-bet, he checks behind.
This is certainly an unconventional check by Mikita Badziakouski with top pair, good kicker, shortish stack in this spot. It feels just like a spot that he should feel comfortable to bet and get it in against either player. I mean, they could easily have draws on this board. It's a very draw-heavy board. There's a lot of problems with this check, Jonathan. What do you think are some of the values of it?
The only really obvious value is the metagame implications, as we like to say, Grant, in the biz. And metagame implications, of course, means the bigger game, the iterated game that they're playing, not just now, but for the next however many years Mikita's going to be playing against these guys. And actually, everyone who's going to end up watching this stream and see this video, they're going to see that he makes this check, and there's going to be value in it for him. People are going to be like, how can you check top pair good kicker on this board three ways at these stack sizes? That's crazy, but he did it, so now it's much harder to play against him. It's much harder to put him on particular kinds of hands. It's much harder to blow him off a hand when he checks on certain flops now, because like, oh my God, he absolutely can have a hand that he's never folding, you know? So that's the only obvious value. The second piece where there may be some value is perhaps someone like David Yan. I don't think this is true for Max Silver so much, but David Yan is going to be very bluffy if you check, if you show a little bit of weakness, and he's seen that throughout the tournament. And so here we are, we're at the final table, there's 5 left. Yan may be even more bluffy here and be more aggressive if we check once, and just giving a chance to hang himself.
I gotta think it's the metagame instead of that, because from a practical perspective, any card 6 through ace, except for a king or a queen, is potentially problematic for Badziakouski, and any diamond. So it feels like you're dodging the entire deck.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is one of his first forays into live poker and being on TV. It's 2016. Maybe Badziakouski's just trying to establish himself as the guy that can show up with anything so he can mess with these other top pros and make it hard to play against him. Other than that, it just seems like a bad idea in practice in this one moment, in this one instance.
Yeah, it's very surprising. It's a little bit like Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, where he's just going to suddenly start, fart talking, from a tree. Because like you just don't know what he's going to do at any point. It's very unusual, but good in that way too. There's value in that. At the same point, is that value worth what he's giving up right here? Probably it is, as long as he's going to be playing long enough. It's 2020 now. We see he is still playing all these games, so there probably was value in doing it. But a lot of these guys, this is one of his first big events that he was playing in, are going to flame out and never get a chance to realize that value that, because you check back right here on TV and everyone got to see it. Like a lot of times you're just not going to make it long enough. I guess no one thinks that about themselves though, right?
If you want to play unconventional like Mikita Badziakouski, one place you could test that out would be Nitrogen Sports Poker. It's got the greatest iterated value poker tournament on the internet, and it's all thanks to the poker guys. When we tweet out our videos, we also tweet out a link to Nitrogen. If you use that link when you sign up for Nitrogen, you get access to this tournament, which guarantees 1,000 buy-ins, but only even allows 300 entries. The math is absurdly on your side, people. Get in there.
I like how you gave us credit instead of Nitrogen credit for that. All thanks to the poker guys. Yes, kneel before us. No, but it is really cool. And there's all this free money. It's 1,000 guaranteed buy-ins. How can you not do it? Get in there, get you some poker.
25% of his stack in there, and he checks it. Huh.
Max has paired his 8 on the turn, but Mikita is still a big favorite to win this hand with kings.
Yeah, maybe the check will work out for him since Max has just caught up a bit.
Action's been checked to Silver.
And he just might bet it.
74,000.
Max is trying to protect his hand.
Badziakouski calls, Jan folds, heads up to the river. Interesting card. The 10 of diamonds pairs the board and puts a potential flush out there. Joe, we have a straighty flushy paired board.
You love it. Max has got some showdown value. Typically, he'd want to get there cheaply.
No, he turns his hand into a bluff and shoves.
He's trying to rep diamonds or a 10. Mikita is in a brutal spot.
A bold bluff from Max Silver.
I actually think this is a fold. Max isn't super likely to be bluffing here, and a ton of stuff just got there. For Max's tournament life and most of Mikita's.
Badziakouski folds, the bluff gets through.
Pretty sweet, Max.
And Max Silver gets it through. So there's a lot to talk about here, but I think first we really have to go back to the turn because the turn informs Max Silver's decision on the river to shove. He bets 74K into 106. That is a surprisingly big amount, Grant. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I immediately just kind of don't like it. Like I think that it makes sense to bet the turn. I actually like betting the turn with an 8. We're denying equity. We expect that we're ahead a decent amount of the time, but I don't know if we need to go as big as 74K into 106 to deny equity because we're trying to fold out basically ace jack and ace queen when we're denying equity. And I think 50K is probably going to do that with equal frequency to 74K. We don't expect either side is going to fold out Badziakouski's other obvious holdings, which would be jacks, queens, nines, or 9-10 plus. So I don't know why we're charging ourselves more as Max Silver here.
It does seem really weird to bet that much. Maybe he's concerned that ace queen is just going to station him on the turn and just not go anywhere. I would think it was going to fold based on the stack sizes everyone has, but maybe he's just not sure and he wants to go bigger. It is a surprisingly big bet. However, when he gets called by Badziakouski, now instead of suspecting that he would be behind, which is what he'd do, I think if he bet 45K or 50K or something like that, he's got to be certain he's behind, right? Like Badziakouski kind of never has ace queen now, right?
Yeah, I agree. He has to be certain he's behind by the river. So that leads to the most interesting question in the hand, in my opinion, which is, should Max Silver be making this bluff on the river? Is it a profitable venture to do this? And the first thing in favor of this bluff is knowing he's behind, right?
Yeah.
Like based on the range that we just gave Badziakouski, the jacks, queens, and nines are probably going to fold to this shove, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And they're just going to check back and win if we check. So that's good to get to fold those hands out. It's also good that Max has a clear range advantage here when Badziakouski checks back the flop. Max can have any flush. He can have a ton of trip 10s. He can have any full house that includes a 10. He can have all 32 combos of straights that are possible on this board. And Badziakouski can have very few of those things besides some of the trip 10s. Yeah. So that also is in favor of moving in.
Absolutely. I mean, as you said, he can have like so many more 10s than Badziakouski has. Badziakouski basically has ace 10, queen 10, jack 10, and 9-10 suited. Max Silver has got like almost all the 10s, certainly all the suited 10s. I mean, he just has so many more good hands than Badziakouski in theory has. So that's pretty awesome. Now, the bad side is, remember what we just said, those things about 10s? Most of Mikita's Badziakouski's range is trip 10s at this point, right? Like he has so many trip 10s and so little everything else.
So ultimately, none of that might matter if we can't fold out enough of Mikita Badziakouski's hands.
Right.
So we're probably, if we're Max Silver, we're not putting Mikita on a king. We don't think he has king queen. We think he, like, if we give him a more traditional check back range on the flop, we think he mostly has pocket jacks, pocket queens, pocket nines, 9-10 suited, and jack 10 off plus, right?
Yeah.
So doing a little quick math, that means he has 26 combos of trip 10s, and he's got 18 combos of pocket pairs.
Yeah.
Right? So assuming, and this is a big assumption, that Badziakouski is folding all of those pocket pairs and calling with all of those 10s, because you have to call with something, and especially given the price that Badziakouski's getting, Max Silver is not giving himself a good enough price to do this, because he's giving himself basically 1-to-1, right? And clearly the calls outweigh the folds by more than 1-to-1, making it not profitable if, in fact, Mikita's range is those hands and he is reacting in that way with those hands.
The thing that's interesting about this is, so Silver is giving himself like 1-1 on this bluff, right? Mikita, though, is getting 2-1 to call. So it's actually okay if Mikita can even fold some of his worst tens and still have this be reasonable if he thinks like, well, I shouldn't call with all my tens because I even like 10-9 doesn't beat any value here, right? 10-9's losing to all the value. So maybe he decides to fold some of his worst tens, but he's still going to be calling with enough tens and more than 50% of his range, I think, overall. He's going to be forced to because tens make up more than 50% of his range. And he's getting such a good price. He's getting 2-1 that it's a pretty easy call, I think, to do that. As we would, of course, mention, he's blocking full houses too, which has got to help a little bit. Obviously, no diamonds, though.
Right. So it seems like maybe this is a well thought out bluff from a lot of perspectives, but it might not actually be profitable by Max Silver. Would you agree with that?
I think the thing that maybe could make it profitable from Max Silver's point of view is this is probably the first time he's played with Badziakouski in one of these spots, or one of the first times anyway, and maybe he thinks he can actually push Badziakouski around a little bit. It's a high roller final table. There's 5 left. Maybe he thinks people are going to play a little tighter than they normally would. I know that happens a lot at final tables. For newer players especially, maybe he's just like, I'm the veteran here. You're going to fold a little too tight. I'm going to push you around. Maybe he thinks he's got that working for him too, and he's just making an exploitative play.
Maybe so. Either way, it works. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think it should. I don't think Badziakouski should consider calling with a king when Silver has so many good hands, and a king is certainly not one of the best hands Badziakouski can show up with when he can show up with so many tens. So I think the fold makes sense.
Absolutely. I agree. And if he was going to call with the king, he'd certainly want to have a diamond in his hand at least to block the flushes. He doesn't even have that. It feels like a pretty standard fold here. Max Silver gets it through. He did it. That was pretty interesting. There's a lot of tough spots here for both players, and we really question ultimately Max's decision to both bet so big on the turn and shove this river. We're wondering if it's profitable or not. What do you guys think? Do you like this play? Do you think this is too much and that Mikita's just calling with too much of his range here? We suspect it probably is what's going on, but maybe we're wrong. Maybe Mikita's going to fold more exploitatively than we think. Maybe Max knows that about him. Maybe he has a read on Mikita in some way. Let us know your thoughts and what you like about these players' decisions and not. Actually, do you even like Mikita's decision to fold his under-rep top pair here? We thought it was pretty standard, but you might disagree. Let us know in the comments. We want to hear what you have to say.
And if you want to hear more about how we came to these conclusions, like how we came up with all of these ideas about whether or not Max Silver's river shove is profitable, you got to check out the podcast where we come up with all of our ideas and have a lot of fun. It's called the Breakdown Poker Podcast with the Poker Guys. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. You should do it, or I'll find you. I'll hunt you down. You don't want that. Sorry, that wasn't a real threat. Don't be afraid. Get the podcast.